Welcome to Truck Chat. Today's episode is what happens when I have an idea and absolutely no one stops me. What started as an International Women's Month idea turned into a conversation that honestly feels relevant all year long. So I decided to sit down with someone who has spent years in both fleet and journalism and ask her what she's learned, what she's seen change, and what still needs some work. My guest today is Lauren Fletcher, VP of Content at Bobbitt Business Media and lead editor of Work Truck. Lauren, I appreciate you making the time for this.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here for probably what's going to be one of the most awkward professional choices that I've made lately.
So, for anyone who may not know your background, you've spent almost 20 years working across both fleet and journalism. With all of that perspective, what's one of the biggest changes you've seen for women over time?
So I think the biggest change really has been visibility. There's always been smart, capable, hardworking women in all of these spaces. That part isn't new. What's changed is that more of them are being seen, heard, and recognized as leaders, experts, and decision makers. I see more women on stage, more women leading teams, driving strategy, and just shaping conversations instead of being invited into them later. I just edited up my March Shades of Fleet episode on women driving change. I had more responses for that episode than my first two combined. So, I see that as progress.
So it's less there are women here too, and more actually she's running this.
Exactly, and I absolutely love to see it.
Okay, so it's clear there's been real progress, but also that the work isn't done yet. When you look at both fleet and journalism today, where do you still think there's more work to do?
Okay, so, leadership is still a big one. Representation matters, but influence matters too. It's one thing to have a seat at the table, but it's absolutely another to be heard, respected, and able to shape what's happening next. In journalism, I think there's room to tell fuller stories, more honest ones, more stories that reflect what women are actually experiencing, building, solving, and leading. Not just the polished version, but, the real one.
So it's not just, look, a woman with a title, but let's actually talk about her ideas, her perspective, and the impact she's having.
Yes, exactly that. Let's talk about the impact, not just the headline. Let's talk about what women are building, leading, and changing, not just the fact that they're in the room.
Well, you definitely seem a little passionate about this. Did you come prepared for this interview, or are you just running on experience and strong opinions?
Okay, a little bit of both. Honestly, I guess I've been preparing for this interview for about 20 years.
That's some pretty serious lead time. I think most people really just review a few notes.
I know I took the long route, but to really bring it all together, I finalized everything at my desk like 5 minutes ago, so I think we're good.
You've had a long view of these industries, and you've also lived a lot of it firsthand, I know for a fact. What have you personally learned as a woman working in fleet and journalism?
So you can't spend your whole life waiting to feel ready. I think a lot of women are taught to be over-prepared, extra sure, fully polished and beyond qualified before even raising their hand. Meanwhile, someone else is confidently winging it with half the information and a strong Wi-Fi signal. So, one big lesson for me has been to just trust my perspective, speak up anyway. And, sometimes if I'm being honest, the only option is to speak up for yourself or speak to yourself in a way that gets you back in the game. So reminding yourself that you do belong here, that your voice matters, and you don't need permission to use it is probably the most important thing, because your voice doesn't become valuable only after everyone else or anyone else approves it.
That's both inspiring and, if I'm being honest, a little too real. I think a lot of women are going to hear that and absolutely feel it immediately.
Well, I guess, that's my brand, saying the quiet part out loud and maybe saying the thing a few more women need to hear, especially on the days when they're not hearing it from anyone else.
Okay, so if you look ahead a little, what would you like to see more of going forward, especially for women in fleet and journalism?
Oh, that's easy. More mentorship. But I think, beyond that, more sponsorship, more women opening doors for other women and just saying, come with me. I would love to see more variety in how leadership looks, more room for different communication styles and personalities, more different paths. Honestly, I want to see more women not feeling like they have to shrink themselves to fit the room. The room can adjust.
That should probably be on a mug or maybe printed out and left in a few conference rooms.
I'd buy it and probably gift it to a few people too, because, honestly, it's a reminder a lot of women still need, even when they already know it.
Okay, for an important journalism question. After almost 20 years of doing this work, do you prefer asking the questions or answering them?
Asking the questions, definitely.
Why is that?
Well, that's where the stories live. That's where you learn, where you listen more, you learn more. I think, asking good questions is one of the best ways to really understand people, not just what they do, but how they think and how they lived and what really matters to them.
Okay, as we wrap this up, if you could say one thing to women coming into fleet, journalism, or really any other industry right now, what would you want them to hear?
Make the space and then take up that space. Rarely will you find people making the room for you. So as I tell my daughters, sometimes you have to make that room for yourself. Ask the questions, but listen to the answer. Share the idea. Apply for the role, say yes to those opportunities, even if you're still figuring parts of it out. And then, find your people. Find the ones who support you and challenge you and remind you who you are when maybe you forget for a minute, because progress absolutely matters at the industry level, but sometimes it also starts in really small ways with one person deciding she belongs in the room, and trust me, she does.
Well, I hope you all found that insightful, encouraging. I know it was just embarrassing enough to keep me up tonight, but truly, International Women's Month is a reminder to celebrate progress, keep pushing for more, and make sure the next generation of women walks into even more opportunities than we did. And sometimes we have to get a little uncomfortable to see true growth. So here's to the women leading, building, questioning, improving, and showing up in fleet, in journalism, and everywhere else. Happy International Women's Month all year long from me, and also me. See you next time.